Hello lighting people, welcome back to my Lua for GrandMA3 tutorial series. Today we're going to be jumping through all kinds of hoops. Loops. Oh, and there's no jumping involved actually. We're just talking about loops. By continuing on the topic of tables, which I've been talking about for the last two videos, and specifically, I'm going to explain how the generic for loop works. Note that I specified generic for loop. The reason is because there are two types of for loops, numeric and generic. Generic for loops are the only ones that are specific to use with tables, so we're going to focus on these today. Basically, a generic for loop is a tool to go through the keys or indices of a table and give you information about each entry, and for some applications it's a lot faster than calling each index individually. Just to make this clear, indices and keys are basically two words for the same thing, and I'll be using them interchangeably. Let's go ahead and get started. The basic syntax for a generic for loop is going to be for var, optional var, I'm just using these as placeholders for now, in pairs, table, do, my actions, end. So that would be basically how a for loop is made. There are two built-in functions in Lua to be used with the generic for loop, and pairs is one of them. Basically, both of them do the same thing, but there's an important difference I'll explain shortly. To back up a little bit, let's review what we know about tables. I'm going to create a table here. One way you could create a table would be like this. My table equals, we'll put 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. This kind of table is also known as an array. I didn't specify the keys for these values, so they get automatically assigned keys 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in that order. If I add another value, let's say I go down here and do table dot insert my table 60, then the new value is added at key 6. A more familiar and often more useful way for us to make a table would be like this. My info is equal to name equals John Doe, age equals 36, birthplace equals United States. In this case, these values are specifically assigned to the keys name, age, and birthplace. Now I'm going to plug the first of those two tables into a generic for loop and explain what it does. In this case, I'm going to use the ipairs function, and it's just written like that, ipairs. And for right here, I'm going to put the name of the table, which is my table. And then here, we're going to go, I'm actually going to change these from var optional var to key value. You'll also see people just do kv. And then right here, I'll do printf. This is my value. As you can see, that's the variable I put right here. Basically what this does is it goes through my table starting at index 1 and temporarily stores the index and value in the corresponding variables, key and value. I could have named these values anything, it'll do the same thing. So it finds index 1, that would be right here, notes that the key is 1 and the value is 10, and uses that information to perform the task inside the loop, which in this case is printing the value. So we go for index 1, value 10, do this, and we're going to print value. And then it goes on to the next index, 2, and does the same thing, and so on. Once it reaches an index that doesn't exist, then the loop just ends. Just to show you how this works, I will run it in MA3. And as you can see, it printed key 1, key 2, key 3, key 4, key 5, those values. And you could totally also do something with the key. You could print the key and the value if you actually wanted to. So this ipairs function is great. This is basically how it works. You'll use it the same way no matter what you're doing inside of here. The only problem with it is that it only works with arrays like that actually have numeric keys. If you tried it with the MyInfo table, it simply wouldn't work. It would look for key 1 and not find it and end immediately. Instead, you have to use this version. I'll leave this for loop here so you can refer back to it and do a separate one. This one is going to say for key value in pairs, MyInfo, do print f. I'm gonna go key and key and then value. And let's go run this one. As we can see, we got the same output as before, and then we had this. Key, age, value 36, key, name, value John Doe, key, birthplace, value United States. To make an example of how this can be super helpful, I'm going to make a fairly simple MessageBox function that includes inputs. These return tables with key value pairs, so to list out the values, instead of typing out printf return table.inputs index 1, printf return table.inputs index 2, etc., like we would otherwise have to, let's use the for loop instead. So I'm going to create a MessageBox, and you do this by setting a variable. I'll use a local variable called return table equal to the results of the function MessageBox. And then we put our table in here with a title. And why not? Put a comma and then the next value. I'm not even going to bother putting a message in here. I'm just going to go ahead and put some inputs in here. So I'm going to create inputs equal to, remember you have to have a table and then a table for each input. And for this input, the information I'm going to use is going to be a name, which will be input 1, a value, I'll just put a default value of nothing, and VK plugin will be text input. That's just kind of the default normal one. And I'm actually going to throw this in here now just so that you know, if you don't put a max text length, you might have a bug cause it to have a limited max text. I don't know why, but I did have this for a while where all of my inputs would only let me put in 2 characters. On my lighting console, on my OnPC, worked fine. But on the console, I could only do a maximum of 2 characters. And by simply setting a max text length, I was able to get around that. So now I just always put a max text length. Even if it's 100 characters, it's just really good to have that so that it won't mess up in case it somehow messes up. Let's do another one. Name equals input 2, value equals something, because I like to have fun that way. And then VK plugin equals text input and max text length equals 100. And then just one more. Name equals input 3, value equals 3, because I can, right? VK plugin equals text input max text length equals 100. Okay, that was a lot. Now, we do have to put a command in here just to get it to close. And we'll go commands equals, again, same thing, 2 sets of braces. I'll just go name equals, okay, value equals 1. All right, now I've created my message box. And just to give you a visual, what we would normally have to do to get each of these inputs returned individually would be printf return table dot inputs, and then put the index here, so that would be 1. And then the same thing with the index 2 and the same thing with the index 3. And that's a lot. So instead, I actually have a better solution, and that is a for loop. Let's try it. For key value in pairs return table dot inputs. Remember, you do want to make sure you get the table of inputs, not the main return table, because the main return table will give you inputs as a key and a table as a value, and you can't print a table. Close that, type do, and then printf value. Obviously, you could put other information here, but I just want to get the value printed right now. End, and let's copy and paste that. All right, we have 3 inputs. And if I hit OK right now, we're going to see 3, a blank space, and something. Now, the reason for this is because inputs actually get ordered alphabetically. So I guess it's placing the blank space as after the numeric value and before the S. Now suppose in input 1, I put A, B, C. And then in input 3, I put another value. Then it's listing them. Okay, that's actually really curious. I have no idea why it's putting another value before ABC, because that's not alphabetically correct. But again, you put inputs into your table and you get a result, whatever that result may be. And I guess it's just confused about another value, honestly, because it's ordering them alphabetically aside from that, and that does not make sense to me. So I guess that's interesting. The point is, it's way easier than actually typing out printf this value for every value, especially when you have a whole bunch of inputs, or maybe you don't know how many you have. This will go through all of them, however many there may be. I'm very excited about how much ground we've already covered, but in the next episode, we're going to be talking about loops again, in this case, numeric for loops. I use numeric for loops way more often than generic for loops, and they're also quite a bit simpler, so I can't wait to share them with you. Until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.